I'm going to start the recording. Unfortunately, I forgot to record it sooner, but that was just the fat review. So you'll be able to see the fat as well in the preceding recording. So we're going to do cholesterol now. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. And then show you the PowerPoint on cholesterol. Can you see the PowerPoint? Just somebody say verbally yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I sit in panic until I get that yes from you guys. Cholesterol does a lot of things in the human body. The one we focus on the most is that it will carry fat around the body. Okay. There are 3 types of cholesterol, and you may have heard already that there's good and bad types of cholesterol. Oops, a little bit too fast. The good cholesterol is high density lipoprotein, HDL. The bad cholesterols are the low density lipoprotein, LDL or VLDL. Okay. And then I think on this slide here, high density lipoprotein, HDL. This is the good cholesterol. The way I remember it's good is when we abbreviate the HDL, I take that first letter H and I say it's happy. So HDL is happy, or the good cholesterol. What this HDL will do is it picks up the fat that you've eaten, and it will, if there's extra around in the liver, it will carry it to the liver for elimination. The HDL will pick up anything extra that's not needed by the body. It will bring it to the liver for elimination. If we go on to the bad stuff, the LDL, I remember it's bad because of the first letter again. L to me stands for lousy. So LDL or VLDL is the bad cholesterol. And what it does is it carries this fat around the body on a joyride. It doesn't really ever leave the body. And it will sometimes get stuck in our blood vessels. And that's what plaque is. The plaque that causes cardiovascular disease, we could think of it as this perhaps yellowish, ugly color material that solidifies on your blood vessel walls, and then it limits the blood flow through the vessel. But what that plaque is made of is, among many things, LDL, bad cholesterol. Okay, very low density, bad cholesterol. Okay. Oh, what do I have here? Oh, how much cholesterol we should have in the body. We could get tested and see how much cholesterol you have. And I do recommend that as an adult, we have a blood test at least once a year just to see where we're at, because when we have really high lousy cholesterol or high LDL, that is a primary risk factor for cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 killer in our society. Actually, 1/3 of Americans die from cardiovascular disease each year. So it's a huge number compared to other causes of death. So if we could minimize our risk factors, we might be able to lower our risk of getting that disease. Now, total cholesterol, we should be less than 200. But you really want to have a breakdown of what's happy, or HDL, that's the good stuff, and what's lousy, or LDL, and that's the poorer stuff. So we actually want high HDL. We want high happy cholesterol. It should be over 40. And we want low lousy cholesterol. That should be less than 100. Okay, to be ideal to minimize our risk for cardiovascular disease. So where does cholesterol come from? If you eat any kind of animal product, the animals have cholesterol in them. Beef, pork, chicken, eggs, milk, cheese, shellfish. I'm losing my track of thought. So shellfish as well. If we eat an animal product, it will have LDL, and that's where a lot of our LDL is coming from, but not all. We could actually, your liver could make cholesterol. Okay. So our liver will make cholesterol every day. Some of us it makes HDL, and some of us it makes LDL. Does anyone want to guess why one person's liver would make HDL or one's would make LDL? And I need to check the chat room because I heard I heard someone. Give me a second. Hold on. Okay, yes. So actually, you guys have a couple of right answers in the chat room. Genetics is a huge dictator of whether your liver makes HDL or LDL. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Another factor is exercise. If you exercise, your liver tends to make HDL. If you do not exercise and you're not physically active, our liver tends to make LDL. A couple of more factors. One is stress. People who are under a lot of stress. Now, this may be mental or physical stress, guys. The mental stress would be, I'm a nervous wreck, there's a problem going on, I have, an issue. That would be mental stress. But physical stress as well. And the biggest physical stress we make on ourselves is the lack of sleep. If we're not sleeping anywhere around 8 hours per 24-hour period of time, now some of you could do 7, some of you could do 9, but if you're not getting that adequate amount of sleep, it's a physical stressor. Your liver's going to make more LDL. And then the last factor about this liver determining which one it makes, good or bad, is drugs. If a person is on any type of drug, alcohol, prescription drug, illegal drug, smoking, the liver tends to make LDL, unfortunately, the lousy stuff. And that's even for prescription drugs. And I'll tell you one right up front is birth control pills. Individuals on them, the liver tends to make a little bit more LDL. So what ends up happening is doctors typically recommend after the age of 35 for women not to use the pill as their birth control because it increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. They'll have alternatives that maybe could be better risk factors of using that. Same thing with alcohol. Somebody who's constantly drinking, we have more LDL being made than the good stuff. So let me check this chat room really quick. Okay, so someone asked in there about blood clots, and actually that's what this LDL is forming. I'm going to show you this right now. What will happen is if we have a lot of LDL, all right, and that's again from eating it, or is your liver making it? Now, if your liver's making it, maybe you're stressed, you don't sleep enough, you have some sort of drug that's causing it to do that. Maybe it's genetics, If we have a lot of LDL, then what happens is this bad cholesterol gets stuck in our blood vessels right here, and it blocks the arteries. So we don't get as much blood flow. Up here on this top here, it says normal artery, or here's a cross section. You've got a lot of blood flow going through this area. So what's at the other end, if it's your brain, if it's your heart, if it's your arm, is going to have a lot of blood flow. When we start getting this bad cholesterol to clot, forming plaque on our blood vessel wall, then what's at the other end of this doesn't get a lot of blood flow. And in fact, in this image here, it's showing that there's actually a blood clot and there's no blood flow going through at all. If these plaques block off the artery so much, then what's at the other end doesn't receive blood. It doesn't receive oxygen or nutrients, and it will die. If we have a blood clot in the brain, if we have this plaque in the brain, it's a stroke. If we have it in our heart, it's a heart attack. These plaques can occur anywhere in the human body. And so what could happen in terms of nutrition is if we're eating a lot of cholesterol, what we eat is LDL. But your liver makes cholesterol in response to eating fat. So a high fat diet, lots of saturated fat or the unsaturated fat, perhaps in the diet, your body has to make cholesterol to carry that. Then our lifestyle factors come into play. If you are exercising and you do stress management, you got good genetics, maybe you're making HDL, and it could handle that saturated fat intake. If you're not doing those positive lifestyle behaviors and the liver's kicking out LDL, the more fat you eat, the more LDL your liver going to be making to carry that fat around. So that's why saying a low-fat diet is important to prevent heart disease, so that your liver doesn't have to make excess cholesterol. And especially if you're someone who's smoking, alcohol, bad genetics, not sleeping, that liver is going to make LDL. Okay. Positive lifestyle behavior, your liver is going to be making the happy stuff. Let me check the chat room really quick. When I hear beeps, I always want to check. But you know that you could actually verbally, let me see something, verbally interrupt me as well. What about antibiotics? Probably. I'm gonna go out there and say if it's a short-term antibiotic, like a week long, probably won't do too much. Short-term, probably not. Now, if there's an issue where you're using antibiotics for long periods of time, I would actually ask your doctor to see if that's the case. And then, so if you're on antibiotics for the rest of your life, I would ask your doctor. Now, what I can say is there's so many factors, guys, that go into if you have high cholesterol. And as you noticed or heard me say, there's so many factors that go into making LDL. It's not just drugs. A lot of it is your genetics, okay? Then we have the stress. Then we have our exercise. So there's a lot of factors, right? So if you do have one that you have to be on a particular drug, what the doctors will typically do is check your liver enzymes. They will check and see if your liver is healthy. They will check and see how much LDL you have. And if it's not a problem, you're going to stay on that drug per doctor's recommendation, okay? So we're just kind of controlling what factors we could control. I could say if you are on a prescription drug that you have to be on and you can't go off of that, then you really want to control those other factors like get enough sleep 8 hours a day. Try to avoid smoking and alcohol. Exercise so that your liver makes HDL. That's the single number one factor that dictates your liver creating HDL, and that's exercise. And it doesn't have to be a ton. You got to move. It's got to be activity. 20 or 30 minutes of movement per day is going to really benefit your liver to start kicking out the HDL rather than the LDL. Okay. So I actually have a slide on this. Let's finish this presentation on cholesterol, and then I'll take some questions. So how do we reduce our LDL? So we're going to limit the food that are saturated or trans fat. What they found is any amount of trans fat increased LDL directly. So as soon as you ate it, boom, your liver kicked out LDLs. That's why we got to get rid of the trans fat. Saturated fat, if you're an exerciser and you're just eating saturated fat moderately, it shouldn't be too problematic. But if you're eating that stick of butter and huge portions of meat and a gallon of milk a day, then that could be problematic with the LDL. Limit foods with cholesterol, avoid overeating, lower stress, eliminate drugs. That's really the case with trying to lower our LDL. And then the case with trying to get more happy stuff, exercise to increase your HDL. We've got to exercise. Okay. So I'm going to go back here. That way I can see the chat room, and I'll see if anybody has any questions. Sounded like a few of you were surprised a bit about cholesterol. Let me check this chat room and verbally ask me if you have any questions. Again, I tell you a lot about cholesterol. What I can say is this. There's good and bad. HDL is good, LDL is bad. We exercise, we get the good stuff, HDL. Your liver will make cholesterol, so you don't have to eat it. Okay. If you do eat it, the recommendation, if you could see on my screen here, is no more than 300 milligrams per day from the foods we eat for cholesterol. So we don't want to consume more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol from food. The primary food that gives us cholesterol, now don't panic, is eggs. I eat eggs sometimes daily. Um, 1 egg, 2 eggs, not going to be a problem. And what the FDA has said more recently, and I believe this is about 3 years ago, the problem in our society of people getting heart disease and having high cholesterol is not from food. It's not eating food that has cholesterol in it. The problem is overeating saturated fats or trans fat, not exercising, and your liver's kicking out the LDL. It's what the liver is creating is what's more problematic than actually eating cholesterol in our diet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if we think about it this way too, how many people are drinking alcohol on an everyday basis, smoking on an everyday basis, um, eating large amounts of saturated fats in fast foods every day? And always remember, exercise your protective mechanism. There's no side effect with exercise. So the question I want you to think about, and I'll pause for a minute here to see if your brains will start working about cholesterol, is if you know someone in your family that has high cholesterol, what would you tell them to do so that they can control it themselves? Why don't you think about that question for a minute? You could type it in the chat room. You could verbally tell me. What can we have a person do who has high cholesterol? Because I'm willing to bet most of you know someone who has high cholesterol. And when we say that, it's usually the the high LDL. Eat less greasy food, yes. Get on the treadmill, yes. Cardio, good. That will kick out that HDL. Anybody else? What can I do? Do your cardio. Well, Patty said there's no going back. If we have high cholesterol, in fact, even with people that have had heart attacks, they've survived them, we could improve their functionality. We could improve their cholesterol still, but they have to be committed to making that change. They have to be committed, for simplicity's sake, to exercise and eat healthy, right? If they will do that, they're going to make huge gains in their health. But what I want you to always remember, you got nurses half my class, I believe, is a nurse. What I also want you guys to remember telling your patients is the importance of sleep and stress management as well, because that's overlooked. I think most people know, you got to eat healthy to stay healthy. Most people know that. Most people don't know how to eat healthy, though. And then we have to take everything into account, including that sleep, drug use, stress, things like that. One important nutrient I want to talk about that will help you lower your cholesterol is fiber. So what fiber is going to do, it's going to lower that LDL. So what foods are high fiber that we can tell people to eat to help lower the LDL? What do you guys think? What foods are high fiber?
Broccoli.
Very good. Vegetables. Anything else? Spinach. Very good. Oats. Laura, you're the winner. Oats actually are the #1 food to lower cholesterol. And they did research studies that stated people with high blood cholesterol, people with high LDL, if they would eat 2 servings of oats per day within a month, their cholesterol levels lowered, even if they did nothing else but that. Can you imagine how important that whole grain is to our body to maintain our health? So if you know someone, maybe it's your mom, dad, uncle, grandma, who has high cholesterol, we could give them some small ideas of what they can do to improve their health. One would be eat high fiber. Oats would be my #1 food. Patty wrote in the chat room, those are brutal. Are you talking about oats? If you're not someone who likes oats in taste. with the oats, this is how I eat them. And you know what? I can't say I'm always perfect with my food either. I usually only eat oats in winter in the morning. In the summer, I don't like anything eating hot in the morning. So with the oats, what I do is I cook the whole grain oat in the microwave. I actually put half a cup of oats, 1 cup of water. When you guys cook whole grains, half a cup of the grain and 1 cup of water. Obviously, you want to make more. Say you want to make 1 cup of whole grain, you would put 2 cups of water. So it's always double the water. I put it in the microwave for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But I don't eat it like that. I can't eat it. I would agree with Patty. It's pretty brutal, plain. So I add fruit. I add some nuts, maybe some chia, flax, walnuts. Um, I also add lots of berries. And I do add a teaspoon of raw honey. And to me, that's definitely a lot better than plain oats. But what we're talking here is any food with fiber, oats just being the best, any food with high fiber will help lower your cholesterol, lower your risk of cardiovascular disease. So what I recommend is like 10 grams of fiber at each meal if we're really wanting to take control of our health. That will lower your bad cholesterol. Now, if we reflect back on carbs, it's also going to help slow down how quickly glucose gets in the bloodstream. That fiber will slow down how quickly blood glucose gets in the bloodstream. So we have less chance of diabetes now, right? And that fiber pushes our food through our intestinal tract, so we have less incidence of gastrointestinal cancers as well. So it's just all around good. Okay. All right. Any other questions on that? Or we will move on to protein now. I saved protein for the last of our macronutrients because it is the easiest. Okay. So let's get to protein. I should be done with this lecture on protein in like 10 minutes. And there's one project I need you guys to do for protein while we're in class together. Let me get my PowerPoint. Okay. Someone verbally tell me, do you see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So lots of colorful, pretty natural whole foods here. These are foods high in protein. Mostly our meats are highest, fish are highest in protein. But as you can see, we do have dairy products with protein. We have some nuts, beans, lentils, whole grains will have a tiny bit of protein. Protein's made up of. Remember those 7 questions we have to know for each nutrient? So what is protein made up of? Amino acids. There's 20 different amino acids. Okay, and you may have seen some of these names before. Leucine, lysine, glutamine. 11 are non-essential, 9 are essential, meaning these 9 essential you have to eat because your body can't make them. Now, if we eat a variety of foods, we should be getting all of these amino acids. That's the importance of a variety. You don't want to only eat one source of protein every single day. I knew someone who only ate chicken breast, nothing else, no other protein, just chicken breast. Well, there's a chance that person might not be getting all 20 amino acids. If we eat a variety of food, there's a better chance of getting all of them. What does our protein do in the human body? It will build and repair all the tissues of your body. So when we're growing, obviously, it will build all your tissues. Then as we're adults, we still regrow our tissues every single day, right? Your hair is growing, your nails growing, your skin's replenishing itself. People tend to erroneously think we need protein to make muscle. We need protein to make every tissue, not just muscle. It makes everything, every tissue of the human body. So what I can say to these people who constantly tell me, well, erroneously tell me I need to eat protein to make my muscle grow bigger, stronger, faster. Your muscle will not grow any faster than your hair or your nails if you eat adequate protein. It's not that I could super saturate my body with protein, all of a sudden I have long hair. It's really the same sense with muscle, okay? We need an adequate amount of protein. And when we meet our needs, all the tissues of the body will build and repair themselves properly. Right? If we don't eat enough protein, then all the tissues are weak. So we need to figure out what that amount of protein is that we should intake per day. We're going to do that in a moment. One thing to say here, protein doesn't give you energy. Remember when we talked about where does our energy come from when we work out? Where does our energy come from when we're doing our chores? Your energy is coming from fat and carbs. It does not come from protein, because protein is meant to build and repair tissues. The only time you would use protein for energy is if you had absolutely no carbohydrates in your body. And in this case, what happens is if you have no carbs, okay, you didn't eat fruit, you didn't eat vegetable, you didn't eat grains, you didn't eat cookies, you didn't eat any of that. No dairy, nothing. Without the presence of carbs, protein transforms in the human body into a carbohydrate, and we still use that carbohydrate for energy because that's the only thing your brain can use. This process of changing a protein into a carbohydrate molecule is called gluconeogenesis. It's a really long word. I'm not going to test you on the name of the word. Gluconeo sounds like new glucose, and then genesis is formation. Gluconeogenesis. If you have no carbs available, your body wants to survive. Without carbs, you die. So it actually changes the protein into a carbohydrate. You use the carbohydrate for energy. It's not a healthy thing to do. Okay. This is what the basis of a low carb diet was, or no carb diet. This Atkins tried to tell people don't eat carbohydrates because that's going to make you fat. What these people were doing on a no carb diet was changing the protein they ate into a carbohydrate through gluconeogenesis and then using that for energy. It makes the human body sick. And when the human body is sick, tend to lose weight. This gluconeogenesis, what will happen is you'll get kind of like a blood poisoning. To make a long story short, you'll get ketoacidosis. And when that is happening in the human body, it will lose weight. So it's effective at losing weight, but it is an illness and it is dangerous. And you can't go on with that for long periods of time without becoming ill. Now, getting back to our protein, so this is a whole story of why it's 4 calories per gram, because a carb is 4 calories per gram. But we shouldn't be using protein for calories ever. If we're eating healthy, we won't do that. Now, the protein recommendations in a day, 12 to 20%. I do think that for active people, we'll just go with that 20%, the higher level. But that's how much we should get in our diet each day. Now, I'm not going to read this to you, but this is all the different places that agree with the recommendations of how much protein you should get in one day. So you don't think I'm just making that up. All those organizations, Athletic Trainer Association, American College of Sport Medicine, the ADA, Dietetic Association, and your textbook authors, as well as I, we all believe that the daily recommendation for protein is 0.8 to 1.7 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. And we're going to do the math in a moment, but this will equate to about 50 to 100 grams of protein per day for most of you. Okay, so you're going to take out a piece of paper and a calculator, and I need you to figure out how many grams of protein you need in a day. I have a slide to help you. You're all still there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, nobody fell asleep on me yet?
No, you're interesting, actually.
Thank you, thank you. All right, I have something here. Why am I not seeing this? I had something here for you to look at. I'm going to do it on my whiteboard because I typed something, but I can't find it. I'm going to give you this equation, guys. This equation is going to show you how many grams of proteins you need in one day. So the first thing you're going to do is determine how much you weigh in pounds, okay? So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say we have a person weighing 150. You see my whiteboard, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, 150-pound person. what we're going to do is we need to find out what this is in kilograms when we talk nutrition. So we'll divide that by 2.2, and that's how you find how many kilograms a person weighs. So if you have a calculator, do this with me. 150 divided by 2.2 ends up being 68.18 grams, kilograms. So a 150-pound person actually weighs 68 kilograms. Now the recommendations for protein, I'll put them here in red, is 0.8 to 1.7 grams per kilogram of weight per day. So you have to pick a number between 0.8 and 1.7. And that number should really be picked based on how active you are. If you're sedentary, not doing much exercise, you'll be fine with 0.8 as your number, 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. If you're highly active, like a college athlete, construction worker, doing lots of stuff, if you're pregnant, pick the higher end. If you're breastfeeding, pick the higher end. So we'll say with these, like somebody who's exercising quite a bit, maybe you're lifting weights and doing cardio an hour or more per day, pick the higher end of like 1.7 grams per kilogram of body weight. I'm going to tell you what I do. I like easy math. I pick 1.0. So what I'm going to do is I will take my weight in kilograms and multiply that by whatever number I pick here, right? I like easy math. I'm going to pick 1.0. That's 1.0. And then my answer, right here in green, is 68 grams of protein per day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I want you all to do it for yourself. When you're done finding the amount of protein you need in one day, post that number in the chat room. None of us are going to know what your weight is or what number you picked. Okay, so you're multiplying your weight in kilograms times a number you pick, anywhere from 0.8 to 1.7 grams, pending your activity. Again, I'm going to mention if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you're going to need the higher amount because you're giving some of that protein to a growing baby. So I'm going to wait. I have 20 students online right now. I'm going to look at this chat room if I can and make sure that the numbers look correct to me. Most of you should be between about 50 and 100 grams a day. Okay, so let's see who's answering. Raise your hand if you've got a question, type the question in the chat room, and I'll give you guys about 1 or 2 minutes to do your math. Vanessa, do you have a question? Okay.
I got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I just got confused. What do we divide 0.2 again for?
Say your question again.
Why do we have to divide by 2.2?
Oh, because you're doing this in kilograms. When we do any math in nutrition, the formulas are based on the metric system, so it's kilograms. So you're dividing, like in my example you see on the screen, it's a 150 pound person. So we need to convert the pounds to kilograms. In order to do that, we divide by 2.2. That's just to get how much you weigh in kilograms.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So your weight in pounds divided by 2.2 will give you your weight in pounds divided by 2.2 will give you how much you weigh in kilograms. Then you take that number of weight in kilograms and multiply it anywhere from 0.8 to 1.7. And that will tell you how many grams of protein you need in one day. Okay? Make sure, I'm looking over the chat room numbers, make sure you've divided your pounds by 2.2 before you multiply by one of these numbers in here. And if you're like me, like easy math, pick your multiplication factor as 1.0. So however much you weigh in kilograms times 1.0 is however much protein you need in one day. And if you're active, just eat a little bit more, simply said, right? If we did a 220-pound person, let's do another one here. Let's do another one quickly. We did a 220-pound person. You see, I like easy math. I'm actually really good at math, but when I talk, it's hard for me to do any math. So we would convert this person. This would be pounds, right? We're converting it into kilograms. This is how much the person weighs in kilograms. Okay, 100 kilograms. We multiply that anywhere from 0.8 to 1.7. So let's pick the easy one, right? We'll pick 1.0. Now your textbook will say an adult who does moderate activity should be fine at 0.8 grams per day. Really, should be fine at that. You want to go a tiny bit more? Go with 1.0. And the magic math problem here says this 220-pound person would be good at 100 grams of protein a day. See that? Not hard, right? Now the question then becomes is, can you eat that much protein? So let's look at a few foods and see if you can. I have a few foods listed on my screen. Can I get that in my diet is the question. So what you see here is how much protein is in some common foods. 3 ounces of meat or fish is about the size of your fist. So everybody make a fist, look at your hand right now. If you ate salmon the size of your fist, you'd be getting about 20 grams of protein. If you ate chicken or turkey the size of your fist, you'd be getting about 25 grams of protein. Okay, same thing with beef or pork. That has the highest amount. But there are some other foods that are non-meat foods, excuse me, I think I'm going to sneeze, that could be high in protein. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. Actually, cottage cheese. Thank you. Cottage cheese is a dairy product, but it's very high in protein. Actually, a cup of cottage cheese, excuse me, I believe it's half a cup, has like 20 grams of protein of cottage cheese. So if you're someone that really doesn't like to eat meat or fish, that's a good source of protein. Eggs have about 13 grams, tofu, 15 grams per serving, milk, 8 grams of protein in 1 cup of milk. I have some images on here that are showing you non-animal sources of protein. So beans and nuts and seeds are the highest of the non-animal sources. And you can see on here, let's see, oats. Half a cup of oats has 7 grams of protein. The lentils, I like lentils lately. I've been doing a lot of lentils. 1 cup of lentils, 18 grams of protein. So the whole grains and beans and nuts, we're talking on average 10 to 15 grams per serving. Vegetables and fruits, it's less. So, broccoli only has 4 grams. Spinach has 5 grams. Dried fruit, 2 grams of protein per serving. So the question, then becomes, can you eat enough in your diet? What do you guys think? What your recommendations were, and then looking at these charts. Are you getting enough in your diet? Right? Because we need that protein to build and repair our tissues. If you're not getting enough, you're not building and repairing your tissues. Okay. I'm going to check the chat room really quickly. We still have 5 minutes, so we're not rushed yet. Let me check this chat room. So there are a few people saying no, they're not getting their needs. I would encourage you to then eat your protein if you can. Number 1, it is a lot cheaper than supplements. Number 2, you are getting more nutrients than just protein if you eat them in food. So if you are eating that whole grain that has 10 grams of protein per serving, you're also getting fiber, carbs, vitamins, and minerals. Okay. It costs less to eat it than buying a protein powder or shake. Now, I do know that many of my students buy protein supplements. They will buy protein powder and make their shakes or put it in smoothies, maybe eat a protein bar. But it really has no added benefit above eating it in your food supply. And I would argue that eating it in food is actually healthier because it comes with the other nutrients as well. Now, there are companies that will try to convince you guys that you need more protein if you are an athlete, or you need more protein if you lift weights. And what they're doing it really for is money. They want you to spend your money and buy these protein shakes and supplements and powders. If you can get it in your food, buying powder protein is a waste of money. You may have seen years ago there was an Olympic bodybuilder, weightlifter. He won the Olympic gold medal. He was a vegan, meaning he did not eat any meats or any animal products. And he ate his protein from fruits and vegetables, beans and nuts and seeds. He got enough. He wasn't taking supplements. He got enough from those foods. So if you're eating the meat, you should be getting an adequate amount. Okay. People that go right ahead.
I'm sorry. So you said, sorry, I forgot what I was going to ask. I'll come back. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So what happens is if you eat more than your recommendation, the first thing that will happen, so let's say your recommendation is 70 grams per day. The first thing that will happen if you eat more than 70 grams per day is that extra protein gets turned into body fat. All right. So now you've just blown your whole purpose of taking it. Now, I want to be in great shape. I'm going to take protein powder. You eat too much of it, it's turning to body fat. Okay. That's not something that most people will tell you, but nutritionists know. That's not something bodybuilders, weightlifters, and athletes want, is an increase in body fat. And that's what happens with excess protein. I highly encourage you to get what you need. So if you are an athlete and you came up to me and said, I'm supposed to get 70 grams of protein a day, I want you to get that or a little bit more. I don't want you to go the opposite direction and not have enough. Okay.
So where
Do you
do
remember?
people, so how do people actually like grow? Because I don't know, like I know bodybuilders, like, you know, obviously they rely on like protein powders and all that kind of stuff. So how are they larger in size versus like everyone else who works out and doesn't do that kind of stuff?
No, they shouldn't be. They should actually, they would, if you ate your protein versus someone who took it in a protein powder, they would not have any difference in body size based on where the protein came from.
Oh, okay.
Now,
So it's only supplements, right?
right. You don't need the supplement to get your muscles bigger. Companies want you to think that because they want you to spend your money for that.
So they don't pretty much don't work at all, right?
They don't work any more than chicken protein or pork protein or fish protein or cottage cheese protein. It works no better than those kind of proteins. Okay.
So like
Well,
someone who is like skinny and doesn't really gain, like, I don't know, just wants to like gain bulk, how would they achieve that?
you need to work out your muscles and make sure you're eating the recommended amount of protein that you're supposed to get. And that's the ultimate way to build your muscles. Okay. So if you ate 100 grams of protein a day and worked out, your muscles will get larger. If you ate 200 grams of protein and worked out, your muscles are not getting any larger than if you ate 100 grams. That extra protein doesn't get sucked into your muscle and just poof, make them bigger. Okay. So eating more, really, once you hit your recommendation of protein, eating more is going to do nothing for you in terms of getting bigger. Now, I encourage you to eat enough protein. And if you're not, let's say you're somebody who needed 100 grams, but you do your diet analysis and you're like, I'm only eating 30 grams. I would say try to get it from your food first. But if all else fails, eat like a protein bar or some cottage cheese. Or if all else fails, I guess you could use that supplement. But it's not really the best source. All right, we did come to the conclusion of our time together today. So what we're going to do, I got through almost everything of protein, but I feel like there might have been more questions. So if you have questions on protein, you could stick around. You can email me your questions, and we are going to review on Tuesday. But definitely look over my entire PowerPoint on protein. by leaving here today, you should know those 7 questions on protein of the nutrient, and then how much you need in 1 day's time. All right, so those of you, if you came in on time and I have your attendance, you could leave. If you came in late after I was done taking attendance, I need you to raise your hand in the room, and then I will check your attendance. And then I'm going to see if anybody has questions. Patty, I have you. Victoria, I have you. Philip, I have you for attendance. Hold on. Joe Sean, I have you for attendance. David, I have you. Melissa, I have you. Kiana, I have you. Amelia, I have you. Jamaria, I do have you as well. Okay, so I have everyone who raised their hand. If you have a question, let me know.
What's that thing you discussed in the beginning of class when I entered and you were like, oh, that one person, something, I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a couple people who needed me to review the blood glucose story. Your discussion and quiz are due tomorrow, which is Friday at 11:59 p.m. for those of you asking. The blood glucose story, there were a couple people. Kiana, Patty, Laura, are you still here?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Patty and Laura are here. If you have time, I could talk to you guys about this right now, but it's up to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. I could do it with my whiteboard, or I could verbally tell you. I know, I kind of like using that whiteboard. I think it makes
go for
me,
it. Whatever makes it easier.
okay.
Yeah,
It helps me know that. Let's see. Okay, here's the whiteboard. So let's pretend that's our blood vessel. Any blood vessel in the human body. When you eat a carbohydrate.
Oh, load again.
What is that?
Sorry, I'm talking to the little guy because I'm also babysitting.
Oh, okay. So when you eat any kind of food that has carbohydrate into it, like you're eating fruit, vegetable, whole grain, you're eating a cake, you're eating rice, pasta, bread, anything with a carb, your digestive system will process that carbohydrate and it turns all carbs into glucose. Okay. So the glucose goes into your blood. So imagine this is your blood vessel and all the carbs you eat turn into glucose, they enter your bloodstream. And there's tons of glucose in your blood. Now, the healthy level of blood glucose is no less than 80, but no more than 120 in your bloodstream. So that's how much glucose should I have in my blood? Say 80 to 120 parts of glucose in your bloodstream. This glucose is what your brain uses for energy. Okay. When we have too much glucose, say it goes above that 120 parts of glucose, it goes higher than 120. We have a hormone called insulin. This hormone will pick up the extra glucose over 120 and put it into storage. You remember this part? There's storage. There's one of 3 storage sites. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. We could put the extra glucose that's over 120 into your liver, your muscle, or body fat. You remember that part?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
So if we work out a lot, it's probably going in your muscle. You know, and I say work out a lot. I'm saying you purposely do like 3 or more days of exercise per week. You're walking, you're doing sports, you're playing, like I play with my kids, I go for walks, I do Pilates. I try to actually do it almost every day of the week, some type of exercise that's 30 or more minutes. So when I eat carbohydrates, my blood glucose rises. Okay. When I eat my breakfast, maybe my blood glucose goes up to 140. Right? Breakfast goes up. The insulin takes that extra, puts it in storage. If I work out, it's going in your muscle as muscle glycogen. Then we have lunch, go up a little bit above 120. I'm active during the day. I'm doing my chores, running around. You're watching kids. The extra carbs is going into your muscle. And then we have dinner. Okay, that would be a healthy situation. Now, if you're not active, you're not doing purposeful exercise, you're not physically doing a hard job, you're not an athlete or doing a lot of work, when you eat the extra glucose that goes over 120, it may not go in your muscle if there's no risk, your muscles are small. It'll go in as body fat. So the glucose, the carbs you ate that causes higher glucose is going into storage as body fat if you don't work out. All right. And that's even with a healthy diet. Now, here's a couple scenarios. I'll do one here in orange, where let's say you're eating a lot of simple carbohydrates. Okay. Drinking soda with sugar, eating processed flour, hamburger buns or white bread or white rice, white pasta. If we're eating a lot of either simple carbs or processed carbs, our blood glucose could go up to like 200, right? 250. Now you have to put everything over 120 in storage. So let's say it goes up to 220, your blood glucose, after eating a meal that is a lot of flour, a lot of sugar. All that extra glucose has to go in storage. So you could put some in your muscle, but if that muscle's filled up, it's going in as body fat. Because the muscle only has a small amount of space. And once it's full, anything extra is body fat. So this would be like if somebody is drinking juices or sodas all day long, or they're overeating processed, pasta, rice with no fiber. The other portion of the story is if you see this orange line here. Let's say this person ate white rice with nothing else, white rice and soy sauce, and that's it. Their blood glucose goes shooting up. Let's say they decided to put veggies in that white rice. The rise of blood glucose would be a lot less with fiber present. So actually adding the vegetable high fiber food or beans high fiber food is not going to cause your blood glucose to go as high as if you ate a food without fiber in it. So that's an added benefit. So you would have less to actually store. The fiber makes that glucose go in the bloodstream a lot slower or trickle into the bloodstream. I'll just quickly do the other side of the story. Let's say we didn't eat for long periods of time and our blood glucose is fairly low. We'd have this hormone called glucagon. And this hormone is going to go to the storage sites and see if it could pick up any glucose from one of these 3 storage sites and put it back into the bloodstream. So what are your questions? It looks like there's still a few of you sticking around. What are your questions about this blood glucose story?
So after 80, you said the glucagon, it will still get stored into like the liver, muscle, and the fat afterwards, right? Or if it's below, sorry.
Oh, if it's below 80, the glucagon takes...
It uses the fat and muscle and whatever, right?
Right, correct.
Gotcha.
It will use the fat to turn it into glucose. It'll use muscle glycogen, turn it into glucose, or use liver glycogen and turn it into glucose. So the glucagon...
it slows down your metabolism, right?
No, that won't necessarily... using glucagon itself doesn't slow your metabolism. Not eating for long periods of time will slow your metabolism down. But let's say you woke up in the morning and forgot to eat breakfast. The glucagon would have to go to your storage sites so that your brain cells don't die, right? And the glucagon is going to say, let me get some of this muscle glycogen and fat, turn the muscle glycogen and fat into glucose so that we could put this glucose in the bloodstream for the brain to use. That's really the glucagon's job.
So after that, like still a while after that, then it would start slowing down the metabolism or no?
Yeah, if you don't eat food, your metabolism will slow down because it wants to preserve the stored muscle glycogen and stored fat for as long as it can. The body knows once you run out of body fat and muscle glycogen, there's nothing left, you're going to die. So what the body will do is it will slow down how quickly, you use up those stored sites because it wants to preserve it as long as possible. So
Gotcha.
yeah, in a sense, it will slow down your metabolism if you go long periods of time without eating. If it's one meal once in a while, not a big deal. But if you're doing it every single day, the body's probably like, well, we don't know when we're going to get food again, so we better preserve these storage sites as long as possible. And then you're just not going to be burning off that body fat.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And what are your other questions on the blood glucose story? Anything else, Laura or Patty? That's all for now. Okay. What you should use this story for is then to understand how we put on body fat, how we take off body fat, how or what we use, what fuel we use for energy when we work out, what fuel our brain uses for energy, things like that. And then when the system goes haywire, if the insulin doesn't work or is not present, that's diabetes. Eventually, if these people are over 120 parts of blood glucose all day long, the insulin will tire out and it'll stop working. That's type 2 diabetes. People born without insulin, that's type 1 diabetes. So that's what goes wrong with this blood glucose story in terms of getting diabetes. Okay, and we'll have a whole lesson on that later this semester.
Can type 1 diabetes go to type 2, or is that not even like a possibility since like you already don't make it?
Right. Yeah. You know, it'll always be type 1 because you don't make insulin. People with type 1, they have to get the insulin injections or insulin pump.
Oh.
So they would always be considered a type 1 diabetic. They have to get that artificial insulin put into their body on a daily basis, whether that's an injection or a lot of these people have automatic pumps implanted into them. Now, a type 1 diabetic could live perfectly normal as long as they monitor their blood glucose on their own and have the correct dosage of insulin daily. I have a couple friends that are that. They're perfectly healthy. The type 2 diabetics, they typically get it. Many of them are already obese because what happens is that the insulin was just working for years, and they may be getting it in their 30s or 40-year-old. The insulin was working so hard for years because their blood glucose was constantly over 120 that it just kind of tires out and doesn't want to work anymore. And so the glucose stays in the bloodstream. And that's not a healthy situation. When we have too much blood glucose, it will start slowing down the blood flow. The blood actually gets thick or very viscous. It won't move through the bloodstream. So the organs and the feet and the arms and the eyes don't get enough blood flow. The heart is not getting enough blood flow because the blood is too thick. And what happens then is they have complications from the diabetes. Some of them get heart disease. Some of them go blind. They may lose an extremity. They may have sores that don't heal, things like that.
Yeah, I always wondered actually about that. Why is it that like if like a diabetic or something cuts their foot, it's just gonna take like a much longer time to heal?
Right, because if it's too much glucose in the bloodstream, it gets thick. Too much sugar in any liquid is just going to turn that liquid really thick, and then the heart can't pump it very well to its extremities. The blood flow doesn't go to the skin, and the wound won't heal as quickly as a person without diabetes.
All right, thank you. I'll save the rest of the questions for when we get to diabetes.
Okay, yeah. But let me know. You can email me too, or what else. So anything else for today?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Patty. I know, Melissa, you're still here. Thank you. And I will talk to you guys Tuesday, but if you have questions between now and then, just email me, okay?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Murphy. Have a great weekend.
Okay. All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.